You think this is all mapping, but it's actually not.
Hey guys, this is Sonnyc, one of the boomer mappers alive until now. And today, I'm gonna talk about my thoughts about how old mapping actually worked.
By old maps, I mean maps before 2013, when the default skin was changed. Let's first start with common misconceptions. So first, old mapping isn't just about techniques like grids or symmetrical sliders. Too many people focus only on the visuals and forget the why behind them. None of the old mappers opened up the editor and thought, I'm gonna map something conceptually old. No, nobody did. Instead, people tried to create maps. That said, if you really want to understand old mapping, you have to start with what old mappers actually thought. Let's go back on time. Earlier OS gave you a limited editor. No rotation, no scaling, just raw grids and copy-paste. Old skin had hit bursts all over the screen. Most players used mouse only, and many players had low-spec PCs with small monitors, adding even more to the visual and technical limitations. So the real question wasn't, how do I make this good? It was more like, how do I even make this playable? That question forms an important mindset. Old mappers didn't ignore those constraints. They believed they had to overcome them. Some mappers were carefully inside the rules. Others tried to stretch them, but both of them had one thing in common: readability. One of the biggest misunderstandings about old maps is that people think they were meant to be a reading challenge, but in fact it was the complete opposite. Readability was everything. Old mappers obsessed over making sure every pattern could be clearly followed. If players couldn't read it, there was a belief it was undoable.
Now I'm gonna mention about 6 mapping traits that old maps had, but remember, these are not the inputs how to make a map feel old, but rather more like outcomes by thinking the way how old people actually did.
Number 1. Minimal rhythm structure. Instead of mapping every beat, mappers focused on the strongest sounds, usually the vocal or the lead. That's partially because of the limited hit sounds and partially due to how scores worked back then. Player rankings were measured by the sum of ranked scores, not PP, so to prevent scores from inflating, there was a guideline limiting a maximum score for ranked maps. New mappers back then were guided to intentionally add rhythmic pauses or breakpoints to follow that guideline. As a result, overmapping was considered something problematic, unlike how we follow most beats today. Number 2. Time distance equality. I believe this is the most important mechanic when explaining old maps. Rhythm should follow the song, and your spacing must follow the rhythm. Because the spacing followed the timing, rhythms were perfectly readable with your eyes, which allowed more complex rhythm choice to follow the song. Number 3. Non-overlapping placement. Damn, this skin is so horrible, how do people even play it? But they actually did. Not because old players were pros, but old maps were designed to be playable with that old skin. If you overlap objects like today's map, it ruins the readability completely. So placement logic started with this question: where's the empty space that I can place my next object? The result was a flow that renders around the screen to avoid visual collision. Number 4. Snappy flow. Not many players used tablets or completely understood mouse aiming. Most players were mouse only, which means movement and clicking were done together. That created more angular and snappy motion along the rendering flow. Number 5. Low AR. To make things even more readable, old maps use lower approach rates to give players a predictable path before they start moving. Even AR8 was considered extremely fast and made objects unreadable. Number 6. Copy-paste economy. With limited editor tools, repeating patterns was not only efficient, but also helped players to read the entire map. Repetition helped understanding music structure and made the patterns predictable to play. So how does all of this actually work in game? This is a real 2008 beat map. It's mapped by Echo, called Weak. It was quite challenging back then, but you can play easily enough with today's skill sets. And here's my modern one trying to be 2008. It was mapped with the 2008 editor, but, the mapping style itself is not 2008. So, you see the difference? The 2008 map follows key rhythms, avoids overlap, and flows from constraint. It plays a bit odd from today's perspective, but they're completely readable. The modern one may look old, but the spacing, rhythm, and flow, it's got much more freedom. Of course, it's mapped with grids, but the idea of jumps or rhythms, it's more like the spirit of modern mapping.
And that's it. We've now seen the core ideas behind the old mapping.
Old maps didn't look old for the sake of it, but they were designed to overcome the old limits by making it readable. If you're only copying the visuals, then you're missing the soul. We now live in a modern era, and maybe we've already overcome the past limits. But is it really true? Don't you think we're living in another constraint called freedom? So, if you want to enjoy the freedom inside the limits, sometimes mapping with an old style could be an interesting challenge for you. If you map one, please send it to me. I'd be more than glad to take a look at it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. See you next time.